and that's fine. You're not hurting my feelings. So for today's presentation, Kyle's been kind of I call him a lurker, but he's not because he's been posting a lot all over social media. He just hasn't been to one of our meetings before. So we finally were able to convince him to come down to Orange County and do a talk for us. So obviously he's from or representing / is behind AquascapeGuide. So he's going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the basics and science of planted aquariums. I just want to mention a couple of things. He did put some things in the auction, but he's also got a bunch of tissue culture stuff here available for purchase afterwards as well. So we're going to, for the sake of the Keelyfish folks, we're going to go through the presentation. We're going to run through the auction. And then while we're doing the raffle, if you want to peddle some tissue culture, we'll do that. Cool? Any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to give the mic to Kyle. All right. Let me give this to you. And then I'm going to give the clicker to you. Cool.
Keep it under 30, as you said.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a hard deal, but
well, the Keelyfish people,
yeah,
they gotta go.
That's right. So the down arrow will advance the slide.
And I got a little laser pointer.
And you do have a laser pointer. Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool.
How you guys doing? My name is Kyle Jones. I'm the owner and creator of the AquascapeGuide. Today I wanted to talk about balancing planted tanks, essentially. I should have said planted tanks instead of aquascapes. But we'll go over plants in general. But who here, I guess, is like new to plants? So I know who I'm kind of talking to. Couple in the back. Who's like medium, intermediate with plants? And then who's like advanced with plants? Way in the back. Couple, okay. Just so I know kind of who I'm speaking to. Down? No? Did that get quit on me? There you go. Okay, so back to me real quick. 20 years of kind of trying to figure out planted tanks and just plants in general, how to keep them happy and surviving. I coined the term, essentially, the Aquascape Guide or the ASG method, which is metrics to help people kind of, how would you say, have a planted tank that's thriving. It can be very difficult. The science can also be very difficult in general. But I started Aquascape Guide 2019. It's a fully educational website solely on educating about plants and planted aquariums, what plants like. As you know, with fish people, fish are much easier to some degree than plants. Like they kind of, I guess you could say what works for a fish doesn't work for a plant. So this all started was learning plants myself. This age-old statement of everyone runs their tank differently. This is a science. Everything is replicatable. Yes, we all run our tanks differently. However, what if we didn't? What if we had a set of metrics that I could just hand to you and say, do this and you'll be successful? And that is what Aquascape Guide is about. Giving metrics to hobbyists, and this is why you see me on social media so much, trying to give people metrics. Go home, use this app, test your light. If it's at 85 par, you're good. They come back, no, it's 40 par. There you go. You know you're deficient. Instead of this, well, it depends. We all run our tanks differently kind of thing. So that's how the ASG method was born. The 5 pillars of planted tanks are lighting, nutrients, carbon, and then filtration and water chem. They're kind of secondary to some degree. The big 3, though, are lighting, carbon, and nutrients. So similar, a parallel. What does fire need to burn? Fuel, oxygen, and heat, right? Who said fuel? Who said oxygen? Okay. There we go. Lighting, heat, nutrients. Same thing. Another analogy I use for a lot of car guys is a gas pedal. You have your gas itself and then a turbo. And we'll go through all of these starting with lighting. So does anyone know how we measure the light's effectiveness to stimulate photosynthesis? Par. Lumens. No. Lumens is actually how our eye perceives the brightness of the light. And I don't want to shame you for taking guesses, right? Yeah, like we used to use watts per gallon back in the day, right? Before LEDs. And it was like, oh, medium light's 2 watts per gallon. Like that has nothing to do with how it's actually going to stimulate, right? So PAR, photosynthetic active radiation. It's only half of the game, right? And I'll give you an analogy. Does anyone know what the other half of that would be? Yeah, they call it PUR. So photosynthetic usable radiation. It's now being combined to just basically say EPAR, which is the assumption we have both PAR and PUR kind of in harmony to some degree. The analogy of having good PAR, bad PUR, is putting a reef light on a planted tank. It's not going to work, right? The light isn't designed to stimulate photosynthesis. So we need good light. We need good enough PAR, which I'll go into some metrics. A fun app that I found is called Photon. It's free for Android, $8 for iPhone. You literally use your phone and stick it under the light. I keep it at 12 inches, and it gives you a PAR reading. So a free little fun thing to download. So going over metrics for lighting. If you're not CO2 injecting, you don't want to go over 85 PAR. You're going to start running into carbon depletion, which is one of the underlying symptoms for BBA, just feeds BBA, when we're crashing tanks. We were talking to someone else about MD's tanks. It's like, okay, well, he doesn't inject CO2 and he has no problems at all. He's got a lot of water volume, and the chances of him bottoming out naturally available carbon is pretty low. So if you're not CO2 injecting, you can go up to about 80, 85 and be okay. Beyond that, you're going to run into algae issues. With CO2 injection, you can get 300, 400 plus. Like sky's kind of the limit. You think about the sun, the PAR of the sun's 2000, somewhere in there. So, you know, we're barely hitting 400. Like we could really push it so long as nutrients and carbon is there to support us pushing. It's like stepping on the gas. PAR is like stepping on the gas of a car. Okay. Okay. So moving to the PUR side of things, there are two studies, one from the University of Michigan and one from Utah State. Both found that plants really love a ton of red, a medium amount of green, and very little blue to stimulate photosynthesis. Obviously, the entire spectrum is needed. The amounts of that spectrum aren't needed, or let's say they vary per se. So this is my WRGB2 on a planted tank. I'll show examples of, this is the spectrum that I run. Oh, and then I max out white generally. And then I do this for all my lights. It is pretty warm in general. You talk about Kelvin. A lot of people don't like the super warm look. To some degree, you can dial in blue and get rid of some of that. It make it more neutral, a neutral white. But if you're just, you know, full sending it for plants, your best bet is to run the light similar to this. If you don't have white, obviously, then you just don't run white, but you keep the other values the same. Oh, and then 8 hours. I don't run my lights longer than 8 hours. You can go 9, maybe get into 10. Once you start getting past 10, 11, 12, you're going to run into issues. So this is a tank that I sold out of. That was a holding tank for Tropica pots. 400 at the top, 275 in the middle, 190 at the bottom. So if you want to know your light's too bright, stick a smartphone underneath it with Photon and it'll tell you, which is kind of cool. And you can't see, well, I guess you can't. This was a close-up of the super reds that we were getting. And notably, Hygrophila coriumbosa is turning pink on me, which was cool. It was gorgeous. It's beautiful, these highlights. I think it's because not only the intensity of the light, but the quality of the light as well. Quality of the spectrum, I should say. All right, carbon. We're doing okay. Plants are carbon-based life forms. They need carbon, right, to grow. If we alleviate the carbon limitation that happens in water, which is generally around 3 parts per million, it just accelerates growth. So not only can we hit it with more PAR, we just hit it more PAR. It wants to grow more, but it has to be backed up with nutrients, which we'll get into. See. So carbon, dialing in carbon is pretty easy. You essentially just inject enough to get a full point pH drop. Your pH to some degree, or say your carbonate hardness, should be at a point where you can achieve that drop without going below 6.0. So running a KH, most people run a KH of around 4, which puts you right at kind of a 7.0. Then you can inject down to a 6.0. So we inject enough to just drop at a full point and you're good. And we leave it there. We have it come on an hour before the lights come on. It turns off an hour before the lights turn off. and you know you have enough carbon. We're at the sweet spot, which is 30 parts per million, versus what we have naturally, which is like 2 to 3 parts per million, which isn't very much. Oh, I meant to say, don't use drop checkers. Don't use bubbles per second, as they can be faulty. Hence the API test kit, or maybe a pH pen from Hannah is what I use now, because it's really easy to just dip it and test. Rely on the pH drop method. So lastly would be nutrients. High CCEC substrates for any root feeding plant is going to be the most efficient way to deliver nutrients to a plant. It just is. People argue, I grow an eco-complete in sand. It's like, okay, great. You can make that work, yes. Is it the most efficient way, or the way your plant would prefer to be fed? No. That's science. You can argue with it if you want, but I guess the earth is flat too. It's up to some people. Aqua soils are this. They are able to, with the high CEC, exchange ions with the water column, nutrients specifically. So there's, Green Aqua, obviously they sell substrate or aqua soils. They want to tell you got to replace your aqua soil every 6 months. You don't. So long as it's retained its high CEC properties and you're dosing a liquid fertilizer, it's going to absorb, uptake that nutrients. I've seen new tanks, people dose, the fertilizer just straight up goes away for 2 weeks because it's the substrate is actively picking it up. More so on the fluval stratum side of things, maybe less on the ADA side of things. But that also tells us about 2 weeks that the substrate can feed plants while we're gone. So dosing while we're gone on vacation, it'll store it all and it'll feed it for that long, unless you're gone, a month or something. Then you may have to have someone dose your tank for you. But aqua soils are just the best way to do that. If you don't have root feeding plants, there are tanks, really easy, low-tech tanks with no CO2 that are all like epiphytes and mosses that can be gorgeous. You don't need an aqua soil, right? So you don't always have to have an aqua soil. A good middle ground is someone's like, oh, I don't want to dirt my whole tank or aqua soil my whole tank. Okay, well then aqua soil the back half and then rope it off with some hardscape and do sand in the front, and you got the best of both worlds. And you're feeding your root feeding plants where they want to be fed. So a big thing in science is Liebig's law of the minimum, and I don't have this memorized. So states that the plant growth is limited by the nutrients that is present in the least amount relative to the plant's needs, even if all the other nutrients is in abundance. How this plays out in his example was the staves on a barrel. You could have everything else you need, light, water, blah, blah, blah. If you're running out of potassium, it just stunts growth. And so this is why I'm not a big fan of SCAPE's line of fertilizer, especially for someone that's new and they're trying to dose like 20 bottles. Like how much do you dose of this? How much do you dose of that? It gets to be easier when you're more advanced, you know what you need to be doing. But something like any good all-in-one, Thrive, Easy Green, I have a fertilizer, anything holistic like that is just going to ensure that plants aren't running out of anything and they have what they need to constantly grow. So how do you dose fertilizer? So I suggest any all-in-one like I did. All you need to do is boost your nitrates we're going to measure by 5 to 10 parts per million. So if you have no fish in the tank, increase nitrates by 5 to 10 parts per million. Leave it there throughout the week. Don't let it dip. Don't let it go up. If it's dipping, you're not dosing enough. If it's raising up, you're dosing too much. So a lot of people argue, oh, you're dosing a lot. My fertilizer is based off of the EI method. It's a modified recipe, which has a ton more potassium than you're going to get ever in any all-in-one. But there's the lean method camp. Has anyone heard of the lean method camp? Or just the lean method in general, ADAs? So it's essentially, you're just dosing potassium and trace and no nitrates or phosphates because they think that it'll stimulate algae. So this is just proof. If you dose a lot of nitrates and phosphates, you're not going to run into an algae-ridden tank. Elaborate for me. Elaborate your question for me. Elaborate your question for me.
Did you just say phosphate? Did you say that?
So my approach doses NPK and heavy. So it's not like the lean method that just doses K or potassium. The lean method voids nitrates and phosphates, but it'll do potassium essentially. A lot of the lean method, and we can go into that in another speak, is essentially they're getting all the nutrients it needs from the substrate. So root tabs or ADA or something hardcore, And then they just keep the water column super squeaky clean. Dosing too little or too much potassium isn't going to cause algae. Generally, it comes from a nitrate or phosphate source, and when it's out of balance. That answer your question? Okay. And then I'll make the 2 tertiaries pretty quick because of the killifish group. Not to dismiss water chemistry outside of the big 3. If you're going to run into algae issues or growth issues, most of the time, it's going to be because of light carbon or nutrients. Secondary to that, when I'm trying to help troubleshoot someone and trying to get their tank dialed in for plants, if they're doing the big 3 and we're still having problems, the next thing I always go to is we check water chem. I learned living in Long Beach with a GH of 28 that it's not good to have really high or hardness of water per se. It affects the plant's ability to uptake nutrients. And I haven't been able to find scientific evidence of it other than just observation collaboratively from the hobby itself. So what I do is I teach to run, I'll put it that way, GHKH of 4. This is focusing on plant health, obviously not livestock health to some degree. Something like a Neo tank, you're going to have to boost up GH to make sure they've got the mineral content they need. Most fish in the hobby, most stuff that we keep that isn't super sensitive or doesn't have special requirements will tolerate a GHKH of 4. And I've been running a KH of 0 as like a test run, which has been kind of cool to play with that a little bit. The big thing with water chemistry is making sure obviously we have the hardness where we need it, but it's high export of organics, sucking all the detritus out, kicking up the fish poop, getting as much of that out of the tank, and then a high import of fresh water and nutrients. You know, I talk with hobbyists and they have a ton of algae and I'm like, okay, you know, what's your water change schedule like? And they're like, oh, I do like, I don't know, 10% every other month or so. Not going to fly for most setups, specifically planted tanks. They love fresh water. There's a Instagram channel I follow, Chris Lipip. He's the owner of Shrimp King, a musician, but he runs to the Conga River and they do dives in the Conga River where all the stuff that we're planting in our tanks just, you know, grows prolifically. And the amount of fresh water that shoots through there on a minute basis is absurd. So then think, you know, we have this little ecosystem in our home and we're giving it fresh water, you know, a cup of it every month. Like you want that organic export, freshwater import. I do 50% weekly is like standard, just maintenance. If I start having an issue, I'll do 75%. If I'm really having an issue, I'll do a couple of weeks of like almost 100%. And you got to keep a little bit for fish and livestock and stuff. What did I say at the bottom? You can adjust GHKs with lifeless. Yeah, we talked about that. API test kit. I've got a video on it, how to use it, and then what to do with your readings on YouTube. That's the best way to do that. Cheap, easy, quick. And the last one we'll talk about is filtration. So how many times should your filter turn over your tank's water volume per hour? Yeah, here. You get a pokey. We shoot for 10. Fluval is really sneaky. They have not only the pumps output, they have the canisters output, and then like a third output. You want to find the overall output of the filter with it all filled up, everything packed up like we have it, biomedia. What is that number? Because they just started in the last year posting their numbers, and it's like halved. So if they're saying like a 307, oh yeah, it's great for 80 gallons. And it's like, well, what's the turnover on a 307? 300 gallons an hour. Okay, that's good for a 30-gallon tank, not an 80-gallon, 100-gallon tank, right? The closer we can get to 10 times turnover on a filter, the more organics are going to be removed pretty instantly. We're also getting circulation, not just filtration. Movement around the tank is just as important as turning over the water in the tank. Yeah, dedicated biomedia. That's another thing. Water flows, I'll say not all filters are created equal. Water flows over a lot of hang-on backs media, where canisters, the water flows through the media. And you're going to get a very different exchange, a more efficient exchange when water's running through it. There are, I think it's SeaChem Tidal, a few canisters, or I'm sorry, hang-on backs, where you get water going through media, and I always suggest those. Only because we can stack it with a ton of mechanical filtration, which does house beneficial bacteria, biological filtration, and then we have room for chemical filtration when needed. I don't really rely on chemical filtration. I would say I do not rely on chemical filtration unless I need it. I've got an article on my website about pretty much everything you would use carbon for, essentially. And then how often do you clean out your canister? We don't clean the canister. We rinse it out. We just want to make sure that we're not restricting flow. To me, that's generally 3-4 months and somewhere in there. I've gone a year and not touched it. Didn't something blow up? No, it's fine. But you're going to start getting a restriction of flow. That 10 times turnover is just going to start declining as sponges and filter floss and all that stuff starts to clog up. It'll drop by 30-40% pretty significantly, pretty quickly too. My secret, everyone's like, how do you get crystal clear water? Filter floss, that stuff. $15 on Amazon. You get like 10 feet by 2 feet. You just cut little sections out, stuff it in your filter. 48 hours, your water will be clear, so long as you have 10 times turnover. It's just a little secret weapon. You can rinse it out a bunch. It's cheap and no need for chemical additives or anything like that. All right, so all these metrics I have in a checklist, and again, called the ASG method. I've got printed out a handful of them. If someone was already taken them, you can also download it free. There you go. Download it free on the website. All this stuff's free. I try to keep all this stuff free. If you follow this to a T, you will be successful. It's that easy. And that's, again, why ASG exists. This is why I'm on websites. I love the hobby and the amount of joy that this hobby brings me, connecting with others, seeing my tanks, seeing my daughters interact with my tanks. People come in the house, oh, this is amazing. It's just great. And I want others to experience that as well. So follow that checklist and you will be successful with planted tanks. All right, should we maybe just come up and ask me for questions to get the clown or the fishy people out of here?
Yeah, we can do that. Unless
Is that okay?
Yeah, yes.
Question, but you mentioned your fertilizer has extra potassium.
Yeah.
In my experience, I've never overdosed potassium. I can add as much as I want and I'll never get empty.
Yeah.
Actually, for green plants, like I was telling you, when the leaves are kind of looking translucent,
Yeah.
you can actually overdose potassium and usually the greens can pop and get bright, you know, like when you get them fresh out of the store.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can, you're right. You can, and if I misspoke, I apologize. You cannot overdose potassium. And most planted tanks and most all-in-one fertilizers don't have as much potassium as they should. Yeah, so if you are dosing Easy Green, a man in the corner with his head down. If you're dosing Easy Green, you could easily, sorry to call you out, you could easily get SCAPE potassium and dose a little bit, and that would help balance out something like Easy Green or Thrive or something like that. Any other quick questions for the fishy people?
Side of things and ADA side of things, the aquasoil.
Yeah. So a very popular substrate, fluval stratum and biostratum. It's available like any Petco. And the cool thing about it is you can get on Black Friday sales and things of that nature. So it makes it very accessible for someone getting into the hobby. It's also a little bit of an easier fertilizer because it's more of a buffering substrate. It'll soften your water a little bit. It's not packed with nutrients to some degree, but it has a high CEC. So you can get something like fluval stratum, just dose a liquid fertilizer, let it start soaking up all that goodness, and pretty cheaply you can get into aqua soils. The other side of that are pretty more expensive, I would say, substrates that have a lot more nutrients in them. So ADA Amazonia, like version 2, they even had to like dial it back because ADA 1 would leach ammonia. It just had so many organics in it. It'd leach ammonia to like 10 parts per million, something ridiculous. So we had to like purge just to try to keep some of it squelched. However, with all that nutrients, you don't have to dose for maybe the first 6 or 8 months. You're going to get far more nutrients that comes in it from the start than having to dose. I don't care what someone has when I'm teaching them. Like, as long as you have a high CEC substrate, you can dose some liquid fertilizer, you get to ADA, supposedly, you're there, right? So you don't necessarily need to go super bougie. The same with Tropica. I retail Tropica soil. It's great. It's not bad by any means. You can delay fertilization for months, but it's not I wouldn't say you need ADA or you need Tropica, you know, especially for price points and getting into this stuff. That answer your question?
What was CEC?
Oh, CEC. Yeah, I didn't outline that. Cation exchange capacity. The substrate's ability to exchange ions with the water column. For example's sake, there was, I think it was a 2001 or two, a very old publication did the CEC on a bunch of stuff. Sand has a CEC of around 1.7. Gravel has a CEC of around 3. Then you get into like EcoComplete has a CEC of around 14, 16. Aquasoils have a CEC of around 45 to 55. So then when you get someone saying, oh, you know, I grow plants with EcoComplete, it's just the same as an aquasoil. It's not. It's inert. It's lava rock to some degree, volcanic basalt. And it does have a decent CEC, but not something like an aquasoil does. But cation exchange capacity. Any more questions? No, you can come up to me afterwards if you're shy. I'll be around slinging cups, as he said. But thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate you guys.
Hey, did you want to download this PowerPoint for free? Jump over to our website at aquascapeguide.com. Go to Shop and Documents. You'll see it there free for download. I also loaded up the notes section in the PowerPoint to provide a little more detail. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Later, Scapers!